Chapter 1. So we're starting off the semester great with just sort of an introduction to nutrition here. A couple things. So we're going to look a little bit at some of the ways in which food impacts people's life. We'll talk about chronic disease, some of the leading causes of death, just some background on the different classifications of nutrients, some of the challenges that might be out there in terms of how to eat a healthy diet, the science of nutrition. This first chapter is really kind of a catch-all introduction and start getting you to think about nutrition and how it impacts your life. So nutrition, if you were to define it, it's really the science of how food nourishes the body. So how does food impact the bodily processes? We'll look at some of the nutrients and the role they have in your body. What would be a healthy diet? That's one of the questions that comes up quite often. And what do we know about nutrition? How can you make sure that the information that's out there is accurate information? So let's dive in here. When you think about your diet, I think I'm cutting off a portion of this. So when you think about your diet, here's the question I always pose out to you. You're constantly turning over those cells in your body. So aside from the weight that you were born with, so if you're born, say, at 8 pounds, 9 pounds, hopefully not a 9-pound baby, everything between that and what you weigh today. So if you're born at 9 pounds and you weigh 200 pounds today, that means 191 pounds of you came from something. And if you think about it, you had to get it from something solid, so something organic. And the only thing your body can produce all of those cells from is what you put in your mouth. So that old cliche, you are what you eat, kind of comes true, right? I mean, the food that you've eaten is basically what you are today. I mean, that's every cell in your body is made up of those foods that you've put into your mouth. Couple things that we look at when we talk about nutrition is, why do we need to eat healthy, right? Why can't I just eat Twinkies and bacon and whatever kinds of foods that I want to eat and not have any concern about it? And really the crux of nutrition is feeling good on a day-to-day basis is really impacted by what you eat, but also lifelong what you eat really impacts your outcomes and your health. And so there's a couple things that impact your health. And while nutrition is big, there are a couple other things that can too. So tobacco and alcohol use, lack of physical activity, we'll talk about those. If you look at the top leading causes of death in the United States, heart disease is number one. The ones here that have the darker blue are ones that are not specifically related to nutrition. So chronic lung disease, not necessarily. Accidents, not necessarily. I'm pausing here for a second because it says diseases highlighted in bold have relationships with diet. So I'm going to kind of say I'm not sure that that's quite so. Heart disease definitely has a relationship to diet. Some cancers and diet are related. Chronic lung disease, probably more from a smoking standpoint. Strokes may or may not. Accidents, depends on what the accident is. Alzheimer's disease, there's a lot of information out there now in terms of the foods that you're eating being much more inflammatory, leading to more memory loss, Alzheimer's, and changes in the brain. Diabetes, definitely. Pneumonia, not necessarily kidney disease, can be related. So when we look at nutrition, there's a whole field of study out there in genomics, nutrition genomics, nutrigenomics. And we can look at the way the body actually functions in terms of the genetic makeup being changed, certain genes being turned on or turned off, methylation of some of our genetic data, and leading to some of these diseases. If we think about things like Down syndrome, hemophilia, sickle cell anemia, these really aren't related to nutrition per se. And then as we move along the line here, some things are directly related. So iron deficiency anemia, we can say is directly related to diet. It could be other things. It can be blood loss. Vitamin deficiencies, mineral deficiencies, toxicities. These can be directly related to nutrition. We're going to talk, when we get to chapter 10, a lot about physical fitness and the importance of physical fitness. As I look at it, I look at the research. To me, physical fitness is the fountain of youth. It is definitely diet and exercise go hand in hand in terms of everything in your body, right? Mental health is such an important part of it, but if you're eating healthy and you're exercising, you're starting off with a good foundation of feeling better about yourself. And if you're able to exercise and eat healthy, you probably do feel better about yourself. So they definitely go hand in hand. So just some things in here in terms of physical fitness and why it's so important. That it affects everything in your body. Other lifestyle choices that can impact you. So diet, exercise, super important. Tobacco use. You're going to watch, I have a video in Play Pause It where you're going to watch a talk about the actual causes of death. So we talk a little bit about what are the top leading causes of death: heart disease, stroke, cancer, but those aren't really the actual causes. It's what caused you to have those diseases. And so the video, I think you'll find, it's a little dry, but it's a good video in terms of really kind of talking about what is it that caused you to have that heart disease in the end. So tobacco, alcohol use, problematic substance abuse, physical activity or physical inactivity can be problematic in terms of health or helpful. A lot of research on sleep. If you're sleeping well, your cortisol levels are good, you're functioning better during the day. We've probably all had one of those sleepless nights. And if you think about people who really struggle with sleep on a regular basis, it can be problematic in terms of blood pressure, in terms of blood sugars, in terms of weight. So problems there. Emotional stress. I think we've all gone through periods of time in our life where emotional stress has been challenging, and that can bring on higher levels of disease. And then environmental factors, right? So things out in the environment that can impact our overall health. And I'm going to defer to this. You're going to read a little bit about the Healthy People 2020 in your book. Basically, every 10 years, the government aligns itself to determine what are, sorry. So the government aligns itself with what are the priorities out there, and we'll look at a variety of different topics. Nutrition is one of them, but there's a variety of other things that they're looking at. And so take a look at that in your book. You've got just some selected objectives that they're looking at. And I'm just going to skim through these rather than bore you through them. Human body and its food. So the energy the body uses comes indirectly from the sun, right? You've got, through the magic of photosynthesis, you've got the creation of these carbon molecules, which ultimately become energy for us. And so eating plant-derived foods or eating animals that eat plants, either way you look at it, the sun is what has created our energy. So the body requires 6 kinds of nutrients, and we can break them down into organic or inorganic. And so the difference between organic and inorganic, organic basically means something has carbon in it. So from a chemistry standpoint, it basically means that there are carbon molecules in it. And so what you can see here is if we break down these 6 classifications of nutrients, it's showing you the molecules that are in them, and you've got carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, which are in most of them, except for water and minerals. Nitrogen is also going to be a component of either your vitamins and your protein, and then minerals are basically the minerals that they have. So if we were to look at that, there's 6 classifications of nutrients. The human body, and we look at foods, both are going to be made up of these very same 6 elements, and different combinations of them in different foods, different combinations of them in different bodies, right? Some bodies have more protein or tissue in them. Some bodies have more fat tissue in them. Some of us are more hydrated. So, I mean, there's different body compositions based on variations. We also talk of the nutrients in terms of energy yielding. So from a chemical standpoint, what energy yielding is going to refer to is they provide energy to the body. So energy in the form of, if you were to think of your car, the energy yielding component of it is your gasoline. So energy to do the activities that your body does. And so our energy yielding nutrients are going to include carbohydrate, fat, and protein. You also have alcohol, which gives you energy or calories it could be consistent with, but we don't consider this a nutrient because alcohol doesn't nourish your body. Vitamins and minerals are not energy producing, so they don't provide any energy, but they provide important compounds for the body to be able to function. And so we see malnutrition or vitamin deficiencies if you don't have adequate amounts of those. And of course, probably one of the most important nutrients in the body, one that we can't live without for very long, is water. One of the things when we talk about nutrients, the term essential nutrients comes up. And so some of our nutrients are essential, like vitamins, minerals, water is essential, carbohydrate, protein, and fat are all essential for the way the body functions. Fiber, while it's important, it's not what we would consider an essential nutrient. You're not going to see nutrient deficiencies per se. You probably will see a poorly functioning bowel system, but it's not going to be essential. The body can't make essential nutrients for itself. It must be provided in the diet. And so something to be familiar with is just that breakdown of carbohydrate, protein, and fat. One of the videos I'm going to have you watch this week also talks about how to determine how many calories there are from different foods. And so it's just going to kind of walk you through that. It'll also talk about how to determine the percent of calories from each of the different types of nutrients that are in there. And that's important because when you look at your diet as a whole, if you're looking at a day's worth of intake, there's guidelines that recommend what percent of your calories should come from protein, fat, or carbohydrate. And as we move along in the semester, we'll talk about heart disease and what are some of the recommendations in terms of what percent of your calories should come from saturated fat, for instance, or how many grams of trans fat should you limit your diet to? Little information about elemental diets. So I worked in the hospital, and we would have people who are recovering from illness, and they would need to be on specific diets that had certain nutrition elements and some that didn't have any. The best food for your diet, for your digestive tract, is actually just food. Eat food. Talk a little bit about phytochemicals and bioactive food components in terms of disease. And so one of the things, if you're on an elemental diet, we haven't identified all the different phytochemicals that are out there. So beta carotene, for instance, that you get from carrots, quercetin that you get in apples. There's a whole lot of other phytochemicals that are out there that are in our foods that we haven't really identified as being essential, but from terms of just longevity and overall health, we're finding that certain components actually produce better lifelong health. Example there would be blueberries and brain health and memory. And so we know that there are components in blueberries that are very helpful in terms of memory.